Hello there. Welcome to Skeleton Key Productions. I'm Quan Graves Kokon. Let's get into the video. Right, in today's video, so in the last video I said that we'd be talking about a political theory series. However, I've got the timing of that wrong. That's actually scheduled to be in quite a few weeks' time. So, in the meantime, we're going to be talking today about politics and why it's important. So, a lot of people you'll hear say, oh, politics is not important, it's just boring, it's just people in suits, like, you can't change it anyway, like, what's even the point, I'm just living my life, like, just leave me alone, But, yeah, that's hella ignorant, that's really, really stupid, and I'll explain why it's really stupid, and how politics really does matter, and how even if you don't think it does, it affects every single aspect of your life. And actually, guess what? When something happens in the news which angers you, which excites you, guess what? That's the product of politics, right? So we're going to get into the video. Okay, so I don't want to get all preachy, but the reality is that we are very, very blessed people. We are very lucky to be born in a place and in a time where we live in a democratic society. So that means that every single person above the age of 18 has the right to vote, right? Has the right to have a say, has the right to speak without fear of getting locked up. This has not only been, it's not only just like not the norm historically, in many places in the world, this is still not the norm. In places like China, YouTube is banned in China even. So there's literally, without getting all preachy and everything, people have literally died for the right to take part in politics. So you're kind of standing on the shoulders of your forebears. You stand on the shoulders of giants, as they say. For you to not really appreciate that and to just be like, oh, I'm going to leave it to other people. A is stupid for that reason. Then also, the other reason why it's stupid is this. Being in a democracy, you might just be one person, but you still have influence, right? At the end of the day, you have a say in how the government is shaped. So by you not participating, that just means that you want to go, hey, you know what? I'm happy with other people running my life. I'm happy with other people basically dictating to me how I should live. And I'm happy kind of just being a slave and not really having any say on things. Because I'd just rather play Xbox instead. Or PlayStation. I don't want to get sued. So when people ask me, so who should I vote for? I say, whoa, hold up. Who said that you should vote? By that, what I mean is this, if you are uneducated on what is going on the different party platforms, on etc., if you haven't done an extensive amount of thought on something, then you probably shouldn't be voting on it, right? This is not to say that people who are stupid shouldn't vote. I definitely do not think that. I definitely think that everyone should have the right to vote. But what I am saying is, you don't have to walk out with a PhD in politics, but it is important to at least have an idea of what's going on. And more importantly, it's really important to know what your core values are and what you want seen in the country, right? So, and that will take a bit of time, and that will take more than just you talking to your friends and family. That will take more than just seeing what your favorite celebrity is saying and how they're saying that you should vote or whatever. And it's much more than what social media is saying that you should vote for or think or act, or you know what I mean. It's serious, and it has to be a very personal thing. You have to really stop and think about what it is that you want out of the world that you live in. Because that's essentially what politics is. It's about your values and your way of looking at things and wanting to see that being put on a national level, international level, etc., however far your ambitions for it go. But it is very much a thing where we're all, when we do politics, it's a thing of people come from it with the best intentions. But that does not mean that people should just blindly vote for whatever their mum and dad has told them to do, or whatever their favourite rapper or singer has told them to do, right? It's serious, right? This is not picking your favourite like sock, okay? This is serious business. So give it a little bit of thought and some respect, right? Because how you vote, or whether you vote or not, is completely up to you. And this is another thing as well. So I study politics at uni, and one of the things that they taught us in lecture halls is statistically speaking, there is no point in voting. Now, what I mean by this is if you think about how many people there are in the country, there are millions and millions of people, right? And based on what constituency that you happen to live in, most people live in what's known as safe seats, right? So in Britain, for instance, you have the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. In America, you have Democrats and Republicans, etc., right? So essentially, if you're on Team Red and you live in a blue seat, then your vote is, if like 70% of people are going to vote one way and you're in the minority, chances are your vote is kind of just going to be wasted anyway. Like whether you turn up or vote or don't vote or like vote for realistically, it doesn't make a difference. Now, the caveat with that is that just because things might seem that way at the moment does not mean that it's always like that. And so if everyone had that attitude of my vote doesn't count, well, let's think about this. In the last general election, I believe 71% of people voted, right? I mean, 29% of people who are eligible to vote didn't vote. Now, if all those 29% of people decided to vote a certain way, then the election could very easily have been swung, right? So for everyone who kind of thinks that it's not important, if we all had that attitude, then things would be static. Things would stay exactly the same, right? For democracy to work, it relies on having a level of faith in the system and respect for the side that wins and respect for the side that loses, right? And that's the only way that we can really build a nation as such. But then again, I hear you ask, why can't we all just get along? Why can't we all just be friends and hold hands? Anyway, never mind, sorry. On a serious note, though, we can't, this is naive, this is completely naive, people cannot just get along so people can get along. People can have very different views and be friends and romantic partners and etc., right? With people who have diametrically opposed political views to them. I myself have a broad range of friends and families, etc., who have very, very different views from me. And vice versa, right? Where everyone's entitled to an opinion. If you get two intelligent people in a room, at some point they will find something that they disagree on, right? And so politics is all about the arguments and the debates about how we like come together with some sort of consensus here, and like how we're able to build something from that, right? So you think X, I think Y. How do we try and sort this out and stuff? Yeah, like what are the good things about X? What are the good things about Y? What are some of the bad things about X and Y, etc., etc. So this is why debate is really, really important, because if you just have a belief that you don't verbalize and is not then challenged by someone, it's a thing of that belief basically just becomes static, right? It's never challenged. It's never, it doesn't become strengthened, right? It's almost like a boxer who trains and trains and trains, but never actually goes into the ring. How do you know whether you're a good fighter or not? That's essentially what politics is. That's what political arguments are. So you might have an idea about something until you talk to someone about it, until you get some pushback and you have a bit of a debate, etc., etc., you won't know what the good bits of your ideas are and what the bad things are. And that's why people who are not open to debate tend to have really, really bad ideas that have really bad consequences when they're implemented, because they've not tested their beliefs against people who oppose them. They don't know how to argue properly, they don't know how to persuade people. That's all part of politics. So some of you who might watch a bit of the news or know a little bit about politics might hear words like left and right being thrown about. So what exactly does that mean? Honest answer is it's complicated. We all vaguely know what left is, and we all vaguely know what right is, yeah. But for instance, who's more right wing, Margaret Thatcher or Adolf Hitler? Now that might seem like a duh, obviously Hitler, but that's not. It depends really on what you're looking at, right? Because the spectrum is not even just left and right. Because first of all, we have to define what left means, and we have to define what right means. So broadly speaking, right means conservative. It means, like, to an extent, it means reactionary. It means slow and steady progress, right? It means you want to keep things as they are as much as possible, right? Left mainly means you want to change things, yeah? So basically, a good way of like thinking of it in very, very broad terms is this, right? Looking about at the world, yeah, how much of it do you want to see change, right? If it's mainly good and it just needs a few little tweaks, then chances are you're going to be more on the right of the spectrum. If you think that the whole system is rotten and it needs a complete overhaul, chances are you will be left wing, right? So that's essentially what we mean by left and right. And then there's also all kinds of debates with regard to what tax rates and what immigration policy, etc., etc. It's a thing of, the reason why I say it's complicated is because you can find someone who has quote unquote left-wing views on something, and that same person can also have right-wing views on something. So when you say this person's left-wing or right-wing, etc., etc., it's a thing of it's quite reductionist, and it's a thing of there's very, very few people who have views that are completely left-wing and people who have completely right-wing views. Okay, most people are somewhere on a spectrum. And they're on a spectrum for very different things on different. They'll be here for one thing, they'll be there for another thing, they'll be there for something, etc., etc. Right? So probably the best way of thinking about it is not even necessarily just as a spectrum like that. There's many different political compasses thing. They've got you have authoritarian and libertarian. So if you want the government to be like strong and like not really give people rights, then you'll be authoritarian. If you believe in people having like the freedom to choose and to not be bossed about by the government, then you'll be more libertarian. So it's really complicated, right? So it's not so just hearing people go left and right. You have to look into that a lot more. And someone calling someone, oh, that person's a left winger or that person's a right winger, you really need to do research into them and see how accurate that is. Because oftentimes people will label people things that is really, really far off from what they actually are. People be like, oh, that person's a communist, and oh, that person's a fascist. It's like, no, exactly. No. So really do look into what people are saying, and don't listen to what other people are saying about them. Do your own research. Right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is looking at influences. Yeah, we're going to look at where we actually get our political values from. okay? And political values are far more, they're far deeper than just thinking I have left-wing values, I have right-wing. That's kind of, really and truly, a lot more, it's a lot more subtle than that, and it requires a lot deeper analysis. So, for instance, the classic thing of what do you value more? Do you value freedom or do you value stability? Right? So people who don't really like much change will value things being kept the same, yeah, because the better the devil you know, as the saying goes, right? So whereas people who want freedom, people who are risk takers essentially, yeah, they don't really mind that. They're not really looking for stability, yeah. They're happy to change things up. So where do those values come from? Do we have when you were raised, do you have a parent who is more risk taking and another one who is more looking for stability, etc.? I mean, it's really complicated. It's not easy at all to think where we actually get these core values from. But these core values, that is actually what really shapes us. The mindset that we have and stuff actually quite accurately predicts which way we're going to vote politically, right? So and this is why typically, so when people are younger, people tend to go with the crowd. Yeah, people tend to be like, oh, this is young people vote this way, so that's the cool thing. I'll just vote. As people get older, they tend to diverge from that. Their opinions tend to change. But if you look at their core values haven't really changed. Just the people who they vote for has changed, right? So when people kind of say, oh, this person's flip-flop, this person's switch party, etc., etc., it's a thing of actually it's a lot more complicated than that, and it's a thing of actually when you drill down to it, that person has maintained the same values over time. It's as the saying goes, my party didn't leave me. I didn't leave my party. The party left me, right? So it's that kind of phenomenon, right? So people do change their minds all the time when it comes to political parties, and actually it's a good thing that people change their mind because it shows that people are open to challenge themselves, right? To be perfectly honest, I don't really care. Whenever I speak to someone, I don't really care what they think. I care why they think it. So if you've arrived at a position, even if it's a position that I agree with, if you've just arrived there because mummy and daddy told you to, and you've not ever questioned that, etc., etc., I have far less respect for that than for someone who was raised in a completely different setting and yet has these values, yeah, because they came to it by questioning their beliefs and by questioning the beliefs of the people around them and stuff. And so that to me is much more interesting. I'm much more interested in being like, okay, why do you think X, Y, Z? And this is tied up with the Socratic method. We'll talk about this at another point when we go through philosophy. But essentially, it's this thing of keep asking people, why do you believe that? Why do you think that? And 9 times out of 10, you will find that most people, their why is really, really flimsy, right? They've not really actually stopped and thought why they think X, Y, or Z. So that's really why when you're discussing politics with someone, especially whether they agree with you or disagree with you, it's always interesting to just ask, why do you think that? And you'd be surprised at just how deep those actual beliefs are in reality. And finally, we're going to be looking at what are your general views about the world in which we inhabit, right? So are you an idealist, right? Or are you a realist? Do you look at the world as it could be, or do you look at the world as it currently is, right? And this also is tied up with your view of human nature. So if you feel that humans are naturally flawed, right, you're going to tend to go towards systems that keep people somewhat in check, right? And that's tied up with the human nature. If you think that human nature is more fluid and actually all that we have to do is tweak the systems and stuff, yeah, and then we'll have utopia, then that also really shapes like your views and stuff. Yeah, so how idealistic are you versus how realistic you are? And this will tie into what we're going to talk about another video with regards to philosophy, where we're talking about the difference between the Hobbesian worldview and the Rousseau's point of view, right? So Hobbes, the world is like the state of nature is basically horrible, like kind of every person for themselves. Or Rousseau basically saying that it's human nature is flexible and it's really up to us to tweak it however way we want. And finally, I'm just gonna finish off with a little quote from me myself, which is this: "We are nothing more than the amalgamation of everything that we think has happened, and everything that we think will happen." Politics is really, really important. This is why it's really important for you to educate yourself and to really think critically about what it is you think, how you came to that conclusion, what you think will come in the future, and how you can work with other people in order to, create a better world than the world that we were all born into. So with that said, just want to say, if you like this video, and give a like please, put some comments on the thing, follow us on Instagram on Skeleton Keys Production, SKP, and also give a follow out to Skevy, I can't pronounce her last name, but the artwork here and the artwork that's on the logo, that was all done by her. And and also give a shout out to Harry Bynes. Again, he's the one who did the theme song. So if you need any artwork or any music done by either of them, don't hesitate to give them a shout. And also as well, actually, I was meant to get the logo up on the thing here, but my printer was moving a bit mad. So at some point I'll get that fixed. And and also, final thing I noticed in the last video, I had like chicken arms. So I kind of realised, I've not worked out for a while. So so I have been working out a little bit, little bit. There you go, little bit. Yeah. But you know what? It's like with everything in life. Yeah, it's like slowly, bit by bit, gradually build up. You're not gonna one day wake up and be a bodybuilder. The same way you're not gonna one day wake up, be a millionaire. Whatever it is you wanna be, it takes bit by bit, incremental thing. And same thing with politics. If you want the world to be a better place, don't just think you can vote in one election and the world's gonna become perfect. It takes steady progress, hard work, dedication, education, etc. Okay? So you like that, how I've segued from my chicken arms to the whole political system. But anyway, thank you and goodbye.